So recently, YammieNoob came out with a video firing his partner Spite. For a long time, I thought his name was Spike. Anyway, there was significant blowback from the YouTube community who followed Papa Yams. And I'll tell you what I thought about the video, why we should cut Yams some slack, and why there's likely more to the story. So, unless you saw the video when it was posted, you're likely going to have to try to find it. After the backlash, it was removed from YammieNoob's channel, but I found it on a repost at JMotoSpot's channel, and I'll link it in the notes. All right, look, for the rest of this video, I'm gonna call Yammie by his actual name, Eric, because he has a real name, and in this video, I'm really going to talk about the founder, Eric, and not so much about the character. So Eric likely took the video down because, let's face it, it was a bit of a train wreck and a bit of a bad PR move. The video included an exit interview where you could see Spite was visibly distraught. I admit it was hard for me to watch and really a little bit cringy. So in the video, Eric mentions that he needed to let Spite go because Eric was going to go a different way, a different direction with the channel. He found himself behind a desk too much, doing the business side of the channel, and realized he wasn't happy and wanted to get back in front of the camera on bikes. I half believe that. I believe he wanted to get back in front of the channel, but I'm not convinced that that was specifically why Spite got fired. It doesn't make sense. And the commenters from the video made it pretty clear they weren't buying it either. Yams could have spent more time in front of the camera and reassigned Spite to spend more time managing the administrative work that Eric wanted to move away from. That was definitely an option. But this idea that a founder would want to get back to the roots of the business isn't unusual. Founders start out creating a business, doing the thing they're passionate about. It typically leads to scale, leads to success. And then in that scale, they find they're pulled into the work they aren't passionate about and become unhappy. I think that's reasonable to believe what happened with Eric. He wanted to get back to the front line of the business, where it all started, and that's pretty rational, especially in an entertainment business where the founder was the talent and the brand that established its success. Okay, so we believe Eric wants to spend more time in front of the camera and on bikes. I don't think any of us believe that had everything to do with Spite getting fired. So there are lots of reasons for letting a staff member go. According to Indeed.com, headquartered here in Austin, Texas. Not a sponsor, but hey, Indeed, hit me up. The 13 most common are, and I'll list them for you: incompetence, insubordination, attendance, theft, sharing confidential information, sexual harassment, violence, threats, misconduct, substance abuse, damaging property, falsifying records, and the last one, using company resources for personal benefit. Not being able to afford the staff and making cutbacks, interestingly, not on the list. So Eric mentions all the growth and revenue they're making at YammieNoob. $250,000 a month, his 8 employees, the operations they have going on, the growth, marketing, financials. If you look on their website, they clearly show a staff with growth and operations manager, video content specialist, an e-commerce specialist, another growth and e-commerce, a video editor, and another video editor. So a pretty robust staff there. He indeed needed more back office staff and less talent staff. He was pretty clear about that. And let's face it, Eric Yams is the talent, like him or not. There were some key phrases in his post that I found pretty interesting. He mentions that he didn't want to have, he didn't want to essentially demote Spite back to the support staff and that Spite was signaling that he wanted to go on larger and more ambitious shoots. Now, was there room for Spite and Yams to do videos simultaneously and for Eric to continue to hire more help? Of course. Was Spite doing videos somehow a zero-sum game to Eric also doing videos? No, probably not. Was recurring revenue a limitation to Eric expanding to more videos and keeping Spite on the payroll? Well, that's the part that is interesting to me. Clearly, if you're making $250,000 a month, revenue is likely not the issue to hiring. At 8 employees in Austin, paying them a living wage, that's my assumption, then he could cover payroll, I believe, in about 3 or so months of the year, assuming revenue was steady. I don't know what his other overhead costs are, but I do live and work in Austin, and I know it's increasingly very expensive. So if it's not likely a financial decision, then what else is likely? Based on the common 13 reasons to be fired I mentioned, I would only be guessing, but let's look at how Spite was fired. What Eric didn't do is just try to act like nothing happened, like when Lori from the 70s show just disappears without mention, or when Aunt Viv from Fresh Prince is suddenly replaced by a new actress. Eric instead decided to be open and transparent about it with his audience. I genuinely believed he intended to do that out of respect for his audience and to offer some sort of consolation to Spite. But I admit, it didn't come across that way. It was super uncomfortable to watch and was a bit of a miss. I felt like I was watching William Wallace being walked to his public execution. I think that could have been done a whole lot better, but it wasn't, because I think the whole thing was hastened. I don't believe there was time, for whatever reason, to workshop some interesting send-off ideas. I mean, these are creative people who develop and broadcast content. They know how to do it. I don't think they were interested in putting that much time into a big production for a huge send-off and last show. I got the sense that Eric wanted to get Spite off the show quickly, but obviously wanted him to have a soft landing. He did this by asking the audience to go and subscribe to Spite's channel and help him get up and running. They aimed for 10,000 subscribers. He ended up getting 20,000 after the first airing. As of this recording, Spite's Corner now has over 60,000 subscribers. So not bad. A nod to YammieNoob's awesome audience and to Spite for the trust he built with that same audience in creating great content. I know it does sound like I'm taking Eric's side, but it really isn't my intent to take anybody's. I enjoyed Spite on the show. I think Spite provided a contrast to Eric that balanced and complemented old Papa Yams. My impression of Yammie has typically been, it's probably unfair, that he was a hooligan sport bike rider who thought that every other biker community sucked. I get that he was just being satirical, but I had that impression that he was entertaining an avid audience of, I hate to say it, squids. All right, I said it. From my observation, this culminated in Eric's very public, and I know it's old news, crash covered by an article back in 2017 by The Drive, where he was reported to have been speeding in the oncoming lane and went head-on into a car. This resulted in a fairly incredible and very public photo captured of the event, and some serious injuries for Eric that I know he took a handful of years to recover, get motion and feeling back in his arms. And also the other driver involved in the incident was also injured. I'll give Eric some credit in the sense that he was wearing all the right gear, which was very responsible and likely saved his life. And he also speaks a lot. I've heard it here and there that you want to save that kind of driving for the track and not for the road. So he's obviously learned a lot from the incident, and all that despite still being a self-titled Street Rossi. But he has shifted and grown. When Spite came on board, He also brought an appreciation to the channel for American twins and adventure bikes. You could see Eric softening over time a little bit about his stance a bit and opening his aperture to other biker communities. Don't get me wrong, I never expect to see Papa Yams celebrate forward controls or what he considers dad bikes. He isn't wrong. I'm a dad and I have both. I'll check back with Papa Yams when he's 45-year-old Papa Yams and see if he's shifted anymore. The bottom line, I think there's more to the story, but I imagine we'll probably never know. Yams and Spite have moved on. It's been about a week, so perhaps the audience has too. But I'll leave you with another thing. There's a great quote from our 26th president, Theodore Roosevelt, about criticizing people when you are not in their same arena. I'm guessing some of you are familiar with it. It's used over and over again. I'll paraphrase, but old Teddy Roosevelt said, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust, sweat, and blood." But it's a very presidential way of saying, unless you have built one of the most successful motovlogs on YouTube, created jobs, and have scaled to $250,000 revenue and growth, maybe cut Eric some slack.